everyone.
I'm back, baby.
It's Jake Ciely.
I'm great. Everybody else sucks.
Oh,
Oh, no. It's every nightmare I've ever had.
Excuse me?
It's time to check the link.
Pretty crazy, huh? But it doesn't matter because none of this has anything to do with the show.
You know what? You just made the list.
Oh, wait, you serious? Let me laugh even harder.
It's all in football.
Sure, we talk about it all the time. Really? No.
What's up, you ducks? I never want that song to end every single time. I just want to keep listening to it. It is All in Football, Week 10 of the rankings debate for fantasy football. Make sure you're over at FTN, code ALLIN, get you 20% off. That's where you can check out all the advice, all the DFS advice, weekly advice. Jeff Ratcliffe has advice over there. Follow Jeff at Jeff Ratcliffe and listen to a SiriusXM show. And also, if you missed it, kind of put the All in Sports, which was before this became All in Football. It's kind of replaced it. It kind of put that to a hiatus bed. Maybe I return like Adrian Peterson with that as a solo project. But Jeff was part of that show too. It was a trade deadline special. Lots of buys, sells, advice. Jeff hammered something home we've talked about a lot in this show, so we won't go through that again, but make sure if you want to give it a listen and you missed any of that, just how to properly trade. It's a lot that we've touched on. Hey, also theathletic.com/BetsTV, all capitals, and you get a first free month where I linked that podcast, so you can go check it out. Jeff, do you want to at least, because you gave advice, do you have somebody where, we are week 10 now, and we get this a lot, and this is when I want to ask you it. If you're looking to make a trade to buy or sell, is this now finally about the time where you start looking at playoff schedules and consider them to have value? Or is it still, hey, we're 5, 6, 7 weeks out. It's still a little too far of what could change?
Yeah, I think we're still too far out, man. Still too far out. Lots of things change very rapidly. You know, I actually had somebody ask me today on the SiriusXM show, who would you want for rest of season? Which, by the way, rest of season for us right now is 5 weeks. It's not 8 weeks.
8 weeks.
Right? We aren't guaranteed to play in week 15 or 16 or 17 unless you decided to start your playoffs in week 14 this season. And I said, the choice was Alvin Kamara or Joe Mixon. And I said, well, I have incomplete information because Alvin Kamara could be hurt right now. And we're really not going to find out until later today if he actually is hurt. We know that the team brought in 3 running backs yesterday to work out. And we know that Sean Payton is notoriously tight-lipped about things. So right. I can't answer the question. So you know what I usually find, Jake, at this time of year instead is a lot of people make panic drops. You know, there were legit leagues where people dropped Antonio Gibson. And I get the concerns about Antonio Gibson, but also he still is the lead back on that team. And I don't think they shut him down. So I usually prefer to scoop off the waiver wire, grab, hey, Allen Robinson showing signs of life. I know people don't want him on their rosters, but he showed signs of life. And he did hit the over, which I talked about on Monday on my Monday Night Football Bets show. We do live on YouTube as well. And it was 3.5. He hit the over. He's trending in the right direction, yet people have already dropped him. So I usually go that route. I find that it's really hard in redraft to build a better team through trades. In Dynasty, yes, maybe in keeper leagues, but I usually treat those pretty much like a redraft as well. But usually you get better in one spot only to get worse in another.
Yeah, that's usually the big thing too, and that's why I always tell people, running back versus wide receiver, and well, which do you need more? And it's harder to find running backs, so I just rather go for running backs. Yeah, I would say tie break the playoff schedule at this point. Like, hey, like these are, and it would have to be like not. It wouldn't even be like, yeah, look, they got 2 good matchups and 1 bad one. And I'll be like, all right, that's great. No. Like, I would say, hey, it looks like on paper, 3 great matchups, and you give me a tie break going forward, then yes. So, it's still a little early. We were just talking a few weeks ago about certain players that were values that aren't. Let's talk about a few weeks ago players alone. Jamar Chase was argued as the number 1, 2, or 3. DJ Moore and Mike Williams were top 5 wide receivers. So I think it's more the value that comes with the player than the playoff schedule of their own. But like I said, I would tie break for that. So going forward, rest of season, Jeff, as I jokingly say that, we're not getting into the James Conner rest of season talk because we don't know how long Chase Edmonds is out. Chase Edmonds might not play the rest of this year, period. But for now, for the next few weeks at least, we'll say 3-ish, is James Conner an RB1, or do you think that Eno Benjamin is going to siphon off what more than people expect? Because it seems the consensus, as in all the fantasy sites out there, are saying James Conner's now an RB1, no question about it, 70-80% of the workload. He can catch balls too. We know how good he is, and now he's freed. I think Eno Benjamin is going to be a bigger thorn than people think, but I would say for me, Conner like 15, not an RB1.
Well, I do have him as a back-end RB1 right now. But Benjamin's an undersized back who really doesn't figure to see. I mean, he's even more undersized than Chase Edmonds, right? So I don't think he's going to see that much work in this offense. That's an overreaction,
could be his upside.
I mean, go figure in the fantasy space that people are going to overreact. James Conner has shown consistent signs of decline for the last 3 years. And yes, he had a heck of a game. But if you feed anybody heavy volume, they are going to perform well. So I'm not fully buying
except for Mike Davis.
Well, he didn't even really get that though. He got the volume last year. He was an RB2.
He got the high teens at the beginning of this year. He was like a fringe RB2. So.
Yeah, if you give him that volume, I mean, even Peyton Barber, guys like that, you give them the volume, they're going to be fine. It's an over-exaggeration for sure. It was also a week where they were without their top 2 wide receivers. It was a very odd game for them to do that. They were without their quarterback. I mean, all these things pointing in the direction of last week was a fluke. And Jake, I'm trying to figure that out because we all know, like, last week was a fluky week. Was it daylight savings time? Like, I can't, I'm not going to curse, but if I could, I would say the F word to daylight savings time because I hate daylight. It's the
wait. No, you like you like daylight savings times. You hate standard time. We're in standard time now. So we all like daylight
standard time.
Yeah. Time's
all relative anyway, as Einstein would say. All time and space is now, and it's just a construct and blah, blah, blah. It does feel like a lot of times though that does screw with people. I don't know why. It's only an hour, but it seems like it does.
They're waking up at different times. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody feels it. I felt it like the first day or two of being like, man, I was hungry 40 minutes ago. Like I feel like I should be going to bed and it's still an hour to go. So, maybe messes with the internal clock. All right. So James Conner, you have as a fringe RB1. When I brought up Nyheim Hines, do you think that, Benjamin could have that kind of value as in a PPR RB3, or you seem even lower than that?
If he was, if we're comping him to Nyheim Hines, he would already be playing, right? Nyheim Hines is a better football player than Benjamin. It's just flat out. So I think you're rostering Benjamin in leagues where your waiver wire is completely picked over, and you have none of these like cuffs available. Why is Alexander Madison available in as many leagues as he is? Am I missing something with this, Jake? Like, is it just I can't use him as a starter, therefore I don't need him on my roster? Why is he out there? I'd rather grab him
multiple
than
injuries.
Benjamin.
I don't know. There's a lot of people that dropped Ernest Johnson, even the fact that so again, it's I understand maybe if in some leagues, you have to remember too, when we see waivers out there, there's still a lot of 10-team leagues. I still get questions about 8-team leagues where you have to make this run. Everybody's got an all-star lineup. Everybody's smash mouth. You're an all-star. And so some of these leagues, they might be out there. They have to remember that part of the thing. But yeah. We'll always get, as Jiggles just said, not my league, quote unquote. So let's talk about.
Oh, yeah. Don't be that guy. I see that comment. Don't be that guy. Not my. Whoa, Jeff, you must be playing in some Bush leagues if he's out there. Yeah, he's out there. Look at the stats. It's like he's out there like 70% of leagues. Not your league.
So let's talk about the Browns then. Because if Nick Chubb plays, let's take it from 2 different angles because he would be the first, I think. We talked about this. I actually talked about it with Pat Mayo and said that we couldn't put a finger on anybody who's got the COVID, even with the vaccine, and got cleared for the very next game. Whether it's Barkley. The effects. Well, Barkley was a false positive on one of them.
So, but he did clear through the protocol, even though he didn't play. Obviously, I realize.
Yeah, so he'd be the first to play. So, let's say Chubb plays. Chubb isn't the question here. Chubb plays. Where's Ernest Johnson for you? And then, if there is no Chubb, does Ernest Johnson take Chubb's spot, or Jeff, arguably higher because of the workload? Because Chubb doesn't see over 60%. When Ernest Johnson was out there, he saw over 60%. So there's your two-part question. Where do you have Ernest Johnson if Chubb plays, and where would he go if he doesn't?
Well, he would go to the bench if he doesn't, that's for sure. But he stays on the bench. We don't drop him until Kareem Hunt comes back.
No. This week. Like, where would you rank the Ernest Johnson Chubb playing? Like, as an RB3? As in playable?
No, I don't think he's playable. He'd be outside of the top 30. Probably, down in you just mentioned Nyheim Hines, down in that range pretty much for me, which is outside of the top 32.
See, I go higher than that. I'd play him over Drake, A.J. Dillon, Mark Ingram. I played him over those backups just because it's the Brown.
Well, Mark Ingram, we got to talk about that. Mark Ingram could be shooting up the rankings.
Well, of course, if Kamara's out. I mean, that's we'll have to play for that one for later on. I mean, that's too much to go into.
I just don't know. I mean, when Chubb is out there, even though I love how he had the 24-yard reception. It's like that's it's a once in a lifetime catch for him downfield like that. But still, he's going to dominate the workload in early downs. And that's where I think the volatility comes in with Johnson. But I do agree with you. For some reason, people still are insisting that Demetric Felton is a running back. And even the team doesn't designate him as a running back. He gets snaps in the backfield, but that'd be like calling Rondale Moore a running back. There's nobody else there. I think that's the most important takeaway for right now. So, yeah, he would be up there in the top 12. For sure, if Chubb doesn't go.
I'd even put him in the top 10. I tell you, if there is no Nick Chubb, I'd play Ernest Johnson over DeAndre Swift against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
See, and I think that if there's no Nick Chubb and you're sitting on Ernest Johnson, you're about to walk into a wonderful week. Speaking of what's been wonderful, if you picked him up at the beginning of the season and panicked that you spent all your fab and it was going to go sideways, it really hasn't outside of the injury briefly for Elijah Mitchell. It's Shanahan. We've been talking about this. Jeff, you've joked about it for weeks. I've agreed with you, and we sat here and said, why is everybody panicking about Jeff Wilson? Stop with Jeff Wilson. Stop with Jeff Wilson. Jeff Wilson comes back, and he's activated, Jeff, ahead of schedule, quote-unquote, doesn't even get on the field. Elijah Mitchell, Shanahan's guy, confidence level 1 to 10, because I say he's going to be a top 15 running back the rest of the way. It is that clear that Shanahan likes Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, confidence level 10, especially because he got more involved in the passing game. He had that ability at the college level, although it wasn't used a ton, but it just seemed like a natural extension of how you could use him there. I also have to caution people against viewing Wilson as the cuff. It's so fascinating when we have players like this, like Michael Gallup right now. What happens is these guys go on injured reserve or they're on PUP, and our brains, for some reason, freeze in time. And then that's our take on the player, right? Michael Gallup, should I start him this week? Well, our mindset is still, hey, Dak Prescott could throw for 6,000 yards. That's not our mindset in November any longer. Michael Gallup is not a startable option if Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are out there along with Dalton Schultz. He's just not. Now, the same thing with Jeff Wilson. We had thought, maybe way back in April – May, that he could have been something before he got hurt. It's November. And honestly, I think there's a strong case to be made for Trey Sermon to be actually be the cuff there, because he's the guy who hasn't missed the last 4.5 months of time with this team. So, yeah, I agree. I love Elijah Mitchell. I'm glad to see this. I would have loved to have seen Trey Sermon because I have him in a bunch of dynasty leagues. But I am glad to see a young player who is getting an opportunity and played well at the college level, even though he wasn't a marquee name, and now it's translating to the pro level.
Yeah. So looking through the chat, there you go, Denise, speaking to her, in an 8-team league. High stakes, very competitive, but 18, sometimes that's what you have. Kneecaps, trading Josh Allen and McKissick for Herbert and Fournette. Is that good? Absolutely. You're going to get a very small quarterback decrease for a much better running back. Always, if somebody's willing to pay up for a quarterback, go ahead and let them do it. This is, hey, look, not my league, Jeff. Drop Gronk to pick up a dropped Kittle. Yes, not my league. Not my league. What the hell league you're playing in where Kittle got dropped? But there's you go. There's people playing these kind of leagues. So let's talk about the Patriots, because the Patriots, we're going to have to do this 3 different ways, Jeff. Let's start with way number 1. Damian Harris is playing this week. What confidence level do you have in Damian Harris at this point? Because they've been kind of siphoning off, that being everybody else, Bolden, Stevenson, everything, a little bit more lately. So, hey, Harris, if healthy, is he still an RB2 for you?
Well, Stevenson got the use because he was banged up last week. So, yes, he is. He's still the lead back in that backfield. Stevenson, if they were that confident in him, he would be a part of the game plan every single week, and he's not. There are some weeks where he still will be a healthy scratch. It wouldn't surprise me if that happened going forward. So, certainly, yeah. Phil Mike, by the way, in the comments saying that he's holding out hope for Michael Thomas. I'll tell you this, when a player tells you he's not playing the rest of the season, you can take him at his word. Michael Thomas is not coming back. I want to hear a guy who's like on one leg being like, oh, I'm like 90%. I'll be out there. I don't want to hear, yeah, I had a setback. I'm not playing. Michael Thomas is not playing this year, and he may never play for the Saints again. We'll see.
I remember I said that at the beginning of the year. I said I wouldn't be surprised if he pulls an AJ Green. I said that at the beginning of the year. This is the reason why his jersey is still covered up back here. And once I take down Heineke, I'm going to have to find something else to put up there instead. So, all right, let's play scenario number 2, Jeff. No Damian Harris, but Randre Stevenson is okay. Did you see enough from Stevenson to say he just steps in as the Damian Harris RB2?
Yeah. I mean, that's the MO, though. We're talking about a coaching staff that made Jonas Gray viable for – well, I guess it was one game, but it was a magical one game.
I thought it was 2 games.
Was
it was
two?
just a one giant game. Because
I think was against the Colts. I remember
right,
that.
It was the great game, but I'm pretty sure he was still on the roster the next week. Everybody thinks that he was immediately kicked to the curb. I'm pretty sure it was 2 weeks later.
Well, there you go. He's a 2-hit wonder.
No, I don't even think he did that well, but I'm just like, I got to continue. I'm going to look this up while you're talking because now I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I do think Randre Stevenson steps into that. It's a volume play like we were just talking about here, and the team is being very smart with Mac Jones. I do think there's going to be a lot of long-term success for Mac Jones. We have to give these rookies the benefit of the doubt for sure, and they're covering him up. He doesn't really have any weapons at his disposal right now either. Hunter Henry, of course, he's got that nice vibe with him. But yeah, there's a lot of run in that offense, and it's not going to go to Brandon Bolden. Brandon Bolden is going to continue to do what he does, so it has to go somewhere. Next logical place would be Randre Stevenson.
Yeah, it was the next week. So he had the 4-touchdown game, then didn't play against Detroit, then back against Green Bay for 1 carry, and then 2 carries against San Diego, and then 11 for 62 against Miami, and then 6 for 5 and a touchdown in the final game against the Jets, and didn't play again, inactive for week 17.
And now we've never heard from him since.
Kicked to the curb, then brought back, so it was the very next week. But all right, so now scenario number 3, Jeff. No Harris, no Stevenson. What are you doing? Are you going Brandon Bolden as an RB2, or is this just good grief? They're probably signing somebody off a practice squad somewhere, and it's just going to be a headache to stay away from.
Yeah, I think that's probably more likely. Who's even on their practice squad right now? Do they have a running back?
I was thinking even somebody else's practice squad at this point.
But they may have the ability to bring somebody up from their practice squad. I would go to depth charts right now, but everybody watching the live stream knows that my stream will completely die if I do that, thanks to my beat up computer here. But I would imagine that would be the first move. And we've seen some teams with success here because remember, these guys are practicing with the teams. So Jordan Howard, now granted, Jordan Howard played 2 of the worst run defenses in the NFL in back-to-back games, but he did okay. I've not been a Jordan Howard apologist recently, and I have to give credit where credit's due, and it got him a 53-man roster spot. So he could go out there. They have no running backs on their
backs on their practice squad. Ooh. They have Trey Nixon and Matt Lacoste are on their practice squad. People remember them, but yes, no running backs on their practice squad.
So they would have to go out and poach from somebody else's. There's a lot of backs out there. They would have to have somebody with some kind of familiarity, though. So running back out of any of the positions is probably the one you can get away with getting those guys in there pretty quickly. It certainly wouldn't be the case at wide receiver, but yeah, they would probably have to because I can't imagine it's just Brandon Bolden all Brandon Bolden.
And yeah, it's going to be something to watch. Again, something probably don't want to trust. So speaking of trust. Hey, you like this segue here, Jeff? How much? Now, this is Thursday night, so if you're watching on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or whatever, you can skip this next 3 minutes and just jump ahead. How much do you trust Devonta Freeman? Great matchup. Looking good. Levion Bell is getting his share and looking okay. As confusing as it is to see the number on him and be like, wait, who is that again? Oh, yeah, it's not a quarterback. It's just not even a wide receiver. It's Levion Bell. But anyway, Devonta Freeman's looked good, looked refreshed. He also is playing for the Ravens backfield. So is that everything it comes down to? Is that You just trust him while he's the lead back there?
I mean, trust is a strong word.
I know. That's why I'm using it specifically.
Yeah, I would use him as a flex. That backfield is consistently a committee. By the way, Jake, in a 14-teamer where I was beat up and battered last week at running back, had no options, I started Levion Bell. And I was actually pretty happy about that with the touchdown. Could have went a whole lot worse. So he actually helped me get a win there. But yeah, I can't use him as anything more than a flex. You know, just when we think we'll have it figured out, it could be Bell. It could be nothing, and it's just a whole bunch in the passing game. Or it could be Lamar, just do it. I mean, granted, Lamar did his thing last week. Or heck, it could even still be, and no, don't run out and pick him up. He doesn't belong on a roster. Tyson Williams.
Ricard? Oh, I thought you were going to say Ricard.
Yeah, Ricard. Him too. It could even be Tyson Williams. I mean, Tyson Williams only has a position on the 53-man or in the game day roster, I guess I should say, as long as Latavius Murray is sidelined. But once Murray's back, Williams goes back to being a healthy scratch.
Yeah, that's I'm with you. Where did I put Freeman? I can double check while we're doing this live in case anybody doesn't want to check the link, which you should. It makes it nice and easy. Yeah, I have Freeman at 32. I still don't feel great about it. You know, maybe if we get some reports early, like today, and Latavius Murray, it sounds like he's definitively out, but. You know, put it this way. Let me throw this one at you, Jeff. Chris Carson doesn't come back. We won't know that obviously by Thursday night. Let's just say, like, today, Chris Carson is not playing. Would you go Devontae Freeman or Alex Collins?
Collins.
Okay. So would I. And I think that's still where we are in the trusting of Devontae Freeman, even in a good matchup. So I don't need to really trust with this situation, but what did you see from the Titans backfield to give you any clarity? Because Jerry McNichols was Jerry McNichols, slight increase. Adrian Peterson ran as the lead. He still split a lot with McNichols, but Foreman got some of his share in his first game action in a long time too. And there's a lot of people watching that game that says Foreman looked more explosive than Adrian Peterson, but Adrian Peterson was the lead. Adrian Peterson got the snaps. Adrian Peterson got the goal line attempts. So one game of the Titans, Peterson, McNichols, and Foreman, what did you come away thinking?
Are they the Nashville Ravens backfield? Is that maybe what we're going for here? It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a complete mess. Foreman, yeah, sure, he looked good. It wasn't just the explosion. He looked like he's never had the most wiggle, but he looked like he had more wiggle than Adrian Peterson did. I don't think every situation just translates to fantasy production for us. It's not a great spot. If I had to choose one, and I'm absolutely desperate, it's Peterson because, as you mentioned, it's the red zone work that I'm most interested in. But I don't want Peterson. I'm not going to. If I'm in that spot already, I'm not. I have no shot this year. No shot at winning my championship.
What if you're in a 14-team league?
That's a little bit different, though. You know how those 14-teamers go. It is crazy as you add those in. By the way, I don't disparage the 8-teamers anymore. I know that was like the running gag forever. Everybody's like, oh, you're in an 8-team league. Here's how you make them better. Expand your starting rosters. There's nothing that says you can't have 3 starting quarterbacks. Do a 3-quarterback league. Have multiple flex spots in addition to those super flexes or additional quarterback spots. Start 3 running backs required. Start 4 required wide receivers. You really want to get crazy? Start 2 tight ends. Even in an 8-team league, that's really difficult. Now you make the league much more challenging. Your waiver wire isn't chock full of players, and it becomes more fun.
Yeah, I'm more of the just to have like 3 flex spots added on just to give everybody the flexibility. So
well, that 14-teamer I'm in has 3 flex spots in addition to your regular requirements. It's just crazy deep.
That's insane. Mike Clay, I had the going deep league. I was like, dude, I don't even have the time to keep on top of this. Like, I'm not really out there going to chase like James Washington or Ray McCloud. I don't have that kind of time. But in the same range. All right, so let's go back to Freeman. Freeman over Adrian Peterson, though, I assume?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's talk Eagles then. Okay. How about that? Speaking of Mike Clay, he tweeted out, I think it was either yesterday. I think it was yesterday, Tuesday. If not, it was Monday. The Eagles did an interesting thing with Jordan Howard. Back off the active roster, but unlike the previous 2 weeks, what he was tweeting about is that they protected him in the practice squad. This time he wasn't. This time he was just out there for the sniping. Probably, I haven't seen if there's been an update today where it's brought back up or protected.
Oh, he signed.
I don't think that
he signed.
So he signed back. So he's back. So he's back again.
Well, no. They used his 2. So the way the practice squad rules work is you can be called up twice. The second time you revert back. You cannot be called up again. Alex Collins, that happened with last year.
Right.
You then, in order to come back up, it prevents the teams from exploiting these guys in their cheaper salary. You have to be signed to the 53. So he was. So
they did sign him. Okay. So
he's in.
So we do have
he's
the update. So that okay. So
Rappaport tweeted that out probably around 11 a.m. somewhere around there today.
Okay, so there you go. So then we have the answer on Jordan Howard. So Jordan Howard, has he shown enough to trust that he is the lead?
To trust that he's the lead. All right, that's better.
That's trust that he's the lead.
Yes, yes, he has. Kenny Gainwell's an afterthought in that offense. I think in a perfect world, it was Gainwell as the Nyheim Hines role, and then Miles Sanders as the Jonathan Taylor or Marlon Mack role, because that's where Sirianni comes from. But it wasn't a perfect world. And then you had this situation where you kind of have Boston Scott. You had to bring Howard up, and Howard, like I said, he showed up. He's actually played well enough. He had 2 very good matchups, but I always say, Jake, and I know you probably have the same mindset, just because you have a good matchup doesn't mean you're going to play well. You still have to actually play well. And he did play well in those. So as long as Miles Sanders is sidelined, Howard now is going to be the top fantasy option in that backfield.
Yeah, we're talking about this, by the way, the Seahawks designated Carson to return. He is not activated yet, just opens the window. Pete Carroll's making it sound like it's still doubtful for this week, just for everybody out there on the Carson side of things. But, yeah, Howard's we're going to watch Howard bring championships? No. Miles Sanders is going to come back, and it's going to be the Texans all over again. It's just going to be a giant-ass mess. So let's talk about the Seahawks, though, because Russell Wilson is back. Talk about coming back early. Super early. It was something that was supposed to take multiple weeks. He was bending his finger further than you're supposed to. And it was a point being, he forced himself back, Jeff. Credit to him. I love and would hope that he looks 100%. However, it's a throwing finger on the hand. Involves a lot of pressure on the ball. Says he's okay. It's a timeline we've never seen with this kind of injury. How much hesitation do you have for Russell Wilson if he's your quarterback, and 2, with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett in his first game back from this injury?
Well, it's a tricky one on the first side, because I didn't draft him anywhere because he was going too early, typically for my liking. If I was sitting on him, this is where things become challenging. If I was just streaming all along, even if it's somebody like Carson Wentz, who I do like this week, I would still just go with Russell Wilson. I'm sorry?
I have Wentz one spot in front of Russell Wilson. It's funny you said that.
Okay, I still have Russ ahead, but I mean, I can see it's pretty close, but I'm not waiting all this time to then just roll with a streamer. I'm going to go with the guy who I drafted. I don't quite have DK Metcalf where I ordinarily would, though he is a back-end wide receiver 1. Tyler Lockett, a sort of mid-range, almost back-end wide receiver 2. Still going to use those guys, and then Russ also adds with his legs occasionally. He's not a run-first quarterback. We know that, but he does have the athleticism to add there. And
like
the finger injury isn't going to impact him in that regard, so I'm going to continue to use him.
Okay. Yeah, so then let's stick with this. Since we got the Carson thing, assuming that's where we're headed. You have Collins out there. Do you still keep, because this is kind of more of a roster decision, this isn't ranking, so just throwing this in the conversation because I know people are wondering. This is normally for the Tuesday show, but we didn't know this yesterday. So Carson's still not back yet. Do you still hold on to Penny at this point, or do you think we've seen enough that he's just not even going to be relevant, especially with Carson about to return? That here, I'll give you an example. You know what? I'll go back. How about this? Would you rather hold Penny or Eno Benjamin?
It's tough. Recent track record in Seattle is their running backs get hurt, especially late in the season. So that's the one reason why in a deeper league I would still hold Penny. I think it's like kind of, do you need something immediate? You're in a deeper league and you need just some points. Well, you could get some points out of Eno Benjamin. So it really does depend on team needs right now. I still buy in on Penny having somewhat of a role. That's, and I still buy in on Collins just being a guy. So I think in deeper leagues, I'm still holding on to him, though. If you're in a regular 10-teamer or even a regular 12-teamer, I don't think that there's enough there to continue to roster him. He's really like a tertiary handcuff at this point.
Okay. So, by the way, while we're doing this, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has returned. So his clock is now ticking as well. So that's one to keep your eye on, also for trades and everything like that. Still don't have any. I'm watching as we're doing this because I just feel like we're going to get an Odell Beckham signing as soon as we finish the show to say, even if he does, it'd be interesting to see if he even plays this week. But let's talk about a situation where we have some wide receivers who might not play, and let's talk about DeAndre Hopkins and the Cardinals. So obviously this is independent of Kyler Murray, who's still up in the air in his own right, and the Cardinals are not going to force him back, and they're kind of playing with house money a little bit too, similar to the Dak Prescott situation. Won a game. They're still atop the NFC, so they don't need to force the issue with him. So let's say Hopkins plays, no Kyler Murray. With how he's looked with this injury, are you just going to throw Hopkins back into your lineup like you do Russell Wilson? Or do you think at this point he's kind of boomer busty? Busty. Boomy or busty? Buster boomy.
He's busty. He was one face mask away from a long touchdown, though. And Jake, something you said last week, or maybe it was 2 weeks ago, and I've been trying to flesh out for people as well. And it deals with Mike Williams, but the same could apply for a somewhat banged up DeAndre Hopkins. I'll still rank him as a wide receiver too. Now it'll be a back end wide receiver too. And I think what a lot of people miss with Mike Williams, for example, okay, ranked wide receiver 21. I don't think that's where he's going to finish. That's not what that means. I think that's the midpoint. And for Mike Williams, the top end is number 1 any given week. And the bottom end is like wide receiver 40 or 50 or whatever. So it's more of like a midpoint of expectations. And I think that's what I would do with Hopkins. And I really think in a lot of instances, you probably will have to play him. If he's out there, I'll use him.
Then, so if Hopkins is out after what we saw last week, Christian Kirk and A.J. Green should be back. So Christian Kirk and A.J. Green locked into your lineups, or just Christian Kirk?
I think just Christian Kirk.
Okay.
As we're expecting no Kyler, so it would just be Christian Kirk for me.
But you would feel better about Green if Murray plays. So there's so many, this is why check our rankings all the way up through Sunday.
But yeah, I think I would. I don't have as much confidence in Colt McCoy delivering those targets as I would for Kyler, but I have no worries about Christian Kirk being in the middle of the field.
You know what the great thing about this is, too? It's a 4:00 game, so we get to deal with all that heading into this nonsense the entire week. At least New England's 1:00. What else do we have to deal with this week? Tampa Bay is at 1:00. Chris Godwin not practicing today. This isn't like Chris Godwin, he plays if he plays. Mike Evans, he's playing either way. It just matter Mike Evans top 7 or top 15. Of course, the question is, Jeff, are you interested in anybody else if Chris Godwin's out? Because there are so many injuries that it's almost down to Tyler Johnson, Darden, and now Brashard Perriman is back on the team. Would you even chance it with any of these guys, honestly?
And Scotty was designated to return, so Scotty could be back too.
Was it? Or was it Darden that got hit to the IR as well? Or something? Darden's either back in or back out.
Pieces, but Scotty was designated to return, but he hasn't been activated yet.
Okay.
I think Tyler Johnson's pretty interesting. He's not as dynamic as Antonio Brown is, but I could see him maybe running some of those routes, not obviously anywhere near what Brown is doing, but still at least be there for Brady. So maybe, but it feels more DFS than it does season long, with a guy like Tyler Johnson. I think it's just Mike Evans. He's got no competition on the other side of this one. I know Washington played him tough in the playoffs last year, but this is a different team this year. You look at like William Jackson. Mike Evans should have his way with a guy like William Jackson. So it would be him, all in on him. And I don't know if Gronk plays as well. So
no, sounds like he's not.
Yeah, really, really feels like one of those games where Mike Evans just explodes.
They just signed somebody off their practice squad, I think, too, to make it sound like there's no potential. Who was it? Pulling it up right now. Of course, I got 18,000 wide receiver news items, and it's Darren Fells. Yeah, they signed Darren Fells to the practice squad. So this sounds like Gronk is out for another week. Whatever happened? Gronk was supposed to be like 2 weeks and back. That has not happened. Gosh, more injuries, Jeff. Tim Patrick on Wednesday misses practice. Now, Wednesday at this point of the season might just be maintenance days, might just be days off if you're a little bit dinged up. But I had the Broncos in here because I wanted to talk about them in general for one thing. Jeff, it's a very, very small sample. 3 games. Not a big sample at all. But Meany threw out the stat on Monday's show and said the 3 games where Jeudy and Sutton have played together. Sutton hasn't topped wide receiver 6'0" after 5'9". That's how terrible he's been in the 3 games that Jeudy has played. How concerned are you for Sutton? And this week, if all 3 are active, how would you rank them?
Yeah, I don't think that I really don't think that is a stat that has any correlation to it. Who were the opponents in these 3 games?
No, ask Meanie.
Meanie, if you're watching, we'll throw up the bat signal here for Meanie. He's probably somewhere talking about hockey, maybe at a Tim Hortons.
Win some money with those bets.
Yeah, he is. That is true. Yo, go check out Chris Meanie's bets, FTNBets.com. No, I don't buy any of that. It was interesting. I expected to see Trayvon Diggs on Sutton, but there was a couple plays where, Patrick was making against Trayvon Diggs. So it actually wasn't a shadow situation. Sutton was just somewhat quiet in that game, but I'm not overly concerned. I really am not. And I don't think, Patrick's status has an impact one way or the other. Just think the reaction of people, and I guess this is why there are rich people in the world, and then there are a lot of people who are not rich.
I found it, by the way. So, is the 3 games where Jeudy and Sutton played together were Giants, Washington, and Dallas.
Okay, so Giants was it was James Bradbury on him.
Right.
Which makes sense.
Washington,
Dallas,
it doesn't matter.
Washington. Well, Washington doesn't matter. Was that a game where the running backs exploded?
No, that was the 17-10. I mean, they did. They had a decent game, but it was.
Was that the game Melvin Gordon had his only run of 15+ yards this season, the 70-yarder? Feel like it was.
No, that was no. Though they were 10 for 47 and 9 for 35. That was the miserable offense day.
Got it. So back to my point, though. Be greedy when others are fearful. If you're going to be fearful when others are fearful, you are just following, the flock. And people are fearful of Courtland Sutton right now. You mentioned buy low opportunities earlier in the show. And while I typically don't go this route, Courtland Sutton you can get on the cheap right now. And I don't have major worries about him, but I also have expectations that I think are reasonable for him. I'm viewing him as an upside wide receiver 3. I'm not viewing him as a borderline wide receiver 1 or whatever we might have thought for a brief period of time this season. So no, I'm not overly concerned. And I don't think Jeudy is the impacting factor here. I think if anything, it's Teddy, and hopefully that changes in the long term. But Teddy's Teddy, and we're going to have to deal with it for now.
All right. So the question here from Daryl, and I want to touch on because this is something I talk about in the strategy section that I have a link to still at the top of the rankings article. It says Waddle, Ayuk, or wait to see where Odell Beckham lands. And it's not even the Odell Beckham part of it. Like Odell Beckham might not even play this week, no matter where he lands. It's the waiting on Ayuk versus playing Waddle on Thursday Night Football. And I know Ayuk is healthy, but point being is if you ever were waiting, like if this was just Waddle versus Odell Beckham, you can't ever wait if you don't have a backup plan. That's part of the strategy I want to talk about. But for this one, Waddle still being on Thursday Night Football, when it's this close, like first of all, I'm taking Waddle over Ayuk, Jeff. But let's say I had Waddle 35 and Ayuk 40. I'd still also go Waddle on Thursday Night Football. Actually, even if I had Waddle 40 and Ayuk 35, I'd still go Waddle on Thursday because 2 reasons, Jeff. One is set back in practice on Friday, and all of a sudden you don't have that other wide receiver when it's close, when it's this close. And then the second part is, I don't know if you agree with this, I kind of like it. If it's that close, I'm going with the Thursday night person because the Thursday night person sets me up for Sunday to possibly make another decision for me. So where I say this is to say, like, let's say Waddle has a huge game, and I was struggling with my flex decision. Now I play the safe play. If Waddle goes goose egg, I play the boom or bust option. So it's evaluating my roster, not the person I'm facing. But the Thursday night kind of gives me a tell. Again, only if it's close.
Now, I do agree. Creating situations where we make fewer decisions is optimal in fantasy football because a lot of people out there, I used to do this, are going to make the wrong decisions. You have too many decisions to make. You're going to make the wrong decisions more often than not. But Jake, if you just thought that, why wouldn't you just rank him higher? So my and anybody who's over at FTN knows this. My philosophy here is start the guy who's ranked highest. Don't go for the boomer bust because your objective is still to score the most points. I know we want to beat our opponent, but even if you're a dog, like I hate that. I love projections. I'm a projections guy, but I hate that the box scores show projections and I'm an underdog and all that. Whatever. whatever. You need to still score as many points as possible. And how often are those stinking projections right on those sites? And of course, Mike Clay is one of my good friends. He does the projections at ESPN, but the box scores aren't, they are not gospel, yet people take them as gospel. Just start the guys who are ranked highest and then let your opponent make mistakes. The fewer mistakes you make in fantasy football, the more likely you are to win.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying, because the difference with that, if it was 30 and 45, absolutely not. But the reason I'm saying this, because the difference between 30 and 35 and wide receiver is it's a coin flip. And for Phil in here, yes, I'm staying with Ayuk over Van Jefferson. Van Jefferson's the third. Van Jefferson's fine if you want to play DFS or if you need a Hail Mary on Sunday finally at that point or whatever. That's maybe that discussion. But never starting Van Jefferson, ever, unless I'm desperate.
Who did the Van Jefferson thing? Because in fantasy football, there's a ton of groupthink, Jake. You know this. I try to exist. Like, this interaction with you is like, I finally hear what other people are thinking in fantasy because I don't want to. I don't read anybody's articles. No offense. I download your stuff, Jake, but I don't listen to it. All that. So you can get the numbers, but that's it.
Same thing.
I don't want anybody else's takes. I want my own takes. And I know somebody was banging the drum for Van Jefferson here over the last 2 weeks because I got way too many Van Jefferson questions for this to just be a fluke.
No, I don't know where it came from either, but that's how it snowballs. That's what happens.
Yep.
So let me see if you want to bang the table for this wide receiver. How about this? Donovan Peoples-Jones. Odell Beckham is gone. He is stepping into Odell Beckham's roles because one of the things that even after Beckham, let's go back to the preseason for everybody on this one, is a lot of people were like, all right, if you're looking who's going to be the next man up, if Odell Beckham gets hurt, which was the conversation at the time, was who's next up. And it wasn't clear if it was Peoples-Jones or Higgins, or maybe they would even try to do Anthony Schwartz as a thing because they drafted him. It's now clear. Peoples-Jones has made it clear. He is clearly now the replacement. So it is him and Landry. Is Peoples-Jones in this offense enough for you to roster and potentially start him as a wide receiver 4? That's all I'm asking, is a wide receiver 4. Basically, T.Y. Hilton conversation.
And I think that to clarify here, he is not Odell Beckham Jr. in this offense.
No.
He's Donovan Peoples-Jones. And I know I'm stating the obvious, but he's Donovan Peoples-Jones with now a little bit more opportunity. What is Donovan Peoples-Jones in this offense? He is a boomer bust guy who has shown multiple times that he is capable of making big plays, long touchdowns, but he's also a guy who's going to get 3, 4, 5 targets. That's it. So no long touchdown. You got one catch for 12 yards. You're in Deshaun Jackson prime of his career territory. So yes, wide receiver 4, but with level set expectations. You mentioned Anthony Schwartz as well. He is the Cleveland Browns version of McCole Hardman. Now, Hardman is finally rounding into form as a pro, but it took a while. He came into the league with all the athletic traits you could ever want, blazing fast speed, but he was incredibly green. That's the same thing with Anthony Schwartz. And maybe he does round into a good pro because he is blazing fast. He's incredible as an athlete. And I've actually been reasonably impressed with him so far, but the expectations are still pretty low for him.
Would you go Peoples-Jones or would you go T.Y. Hilton? T.Y. Hilton?
T.Y. Hilton, but he just can't stay healthy.
No, but Carson Wentz likes looking his way.
He does.
Great matchup on top of it. T.Y. Hilton's been spending some time in the slot too, which Jaguars are terrible on defense, but especially terrible in the slot.
They weren't
Sanders, Ayuk, or DPG. Did I say that? No, DPJ. DPG. I was doing the wrong. DPJ is the rapper. No. Dog pound. So anyway, Snoop Dogg, DPG.
You're taking me too far back there.
Sanders is easy in that one.
Juice today, Jake, for that reference.
Sanders is super easy in that one. Super easy, barely.
Yes. And Ayuk, 2 weeks ago, you could have gotten for a bologna sandwich. Now everybody wants him. Again, now everybody's greedy. Maybe we should be just a tick fearful there. I love Brandon Ayuk, what he's shown over the last 2 weeks, but we can't just simply now set our watch to him. Like, Debo's still there. Kittle's still in the mix. He's still the number 3, and his quarterback is still Jimmy Garoppolo.
So here's one, only because some updated news is no practice for Zach Moss. How good would you feel about Devin Singletary if there's no Zach Moss?
Not that great, but Batman RB2. It all comes down to volume, and I guess they'll have to give it to him. Remember last year we had the same situation where Moss wasn't playing, and they found a reason to not give Singletary the volume. Remember, he's a really undersized back, so he's not really suited to getting like a 20-plus touch workload. But the ability in a passing game, I think, is what gives him the most appeal, Jake.
All right. So the Dolphins reportedly are preparing for Jacoby Brissette for another week. Kyle Murray did not practice today. DeAndre Hopkins did not practice today. So there's all those things to continue to monitor. Real quickly before we get to our streamers, Jeff, the Jets should get, expectedly, Corey Davis back this week. Now what? Because Elijah Moore has looked great, but Elijah Moore has looked great also because the Jets weren't letting him be stifled by Jamison Crowder. They're playing Elijah Moore outside 70% of the time, but Corey Davis is potentially back. So let's say Corey Davis is back. Davis, Crowder, Moore in that order for you, or do you think Moore's done enough that they've got to find a way to use him?
Well, they've made a rare exception in Canton, Ohio. This came out earlier today. They're going to just put Elijah Moore in the Hall of Fame already. Guys, pump the brakes a little bit with Elijah Moore.
With Rondell, right? Rondell after week 2.
Yes, he was in too. If your last name is Moore, you are in. Matt Moore, you're next, bro. You're getting in as the all-time best backup quarterback. We saw this happen over the last 2 weeks without Corey Davis. That is the key. So I have a Davis, Moore, Crowder. Crowder, not much upside for me, but it's really close between the three of them. I don't really want to use any of them if I can get away with it, but if I had to, it would be Davis. I'm going to keep Moore on benches, though. He was my top waiver out of the week for a reason, because if you show that ceiling, that's good. I just want to see it all come together. And again, I'm willing to let him go off on my bench just to prevent him from possibly putting up a dud in my starting lineup. Once I see it with Davis, then I will believe it.
Or going off in somebody else's lineup because they're desperate enough to start him. That'd be terrible, too. Yeah, I have all the moops on my bench. I have Rondell and Elijah Moore on my bench, so I have both of them. They're a little Seinfeld reference for everybody there. So streaming quarterbacks and tight ends of the week. Derek Carr, he's not really under the radar at this point, but he's been up and down. Love the potential matchup. They've been able to run a lot in the games that they've been winning so far, but this one points more to the passing game. He's still only teen quarterback for me, but I'm going with Derek Carr. I kind of left the one that you took. I wanted to take him because I took him last week, but you can definitely take your streaming quarterback. I like him as well.
Yeah, you got the Phillip Rivers 2.0 edition, so I don't mind Derek Carr at all. Plus, the matchup is very tasty. I'm going with Carson Wentz. He's playing good football. He's getting ever so close to that threshold for the Philadelphia Eagles fans out there. There is a Twitter account that is tracking that. But it's really comes down to he's thrown the ball well. He's got a lot of opportunities here. The run game helps him out, sustains those drives, and then he has this awesome connection working with Michael Pittman Jr. So he's a top 12 option. Arguably, well, there's 10, and then he's the next man up for me this week at 11.
So real quick, before we get to tight ends and get out of here, Lee, Brian Edwards, start with caution, no hold. Do not drop him. See what Deshaun Jackson does for this offense. I think he fills the Ruggs role and potentially get the Edwards back that we saw for the 2 weeks before that all happened. But if it doesn't happen again this week, then yeah, you could drop. Just don't drop him yet, but definitely don't start him. Hey, I'm putting this one to bed. Can no longer stream Air Fryermuth. I've been playing that one way too much. He is officially off the streaming list because he's officially a top 7 or 8 tight end the rest of the way. So I'm going back to Dan Arnold. I will use Arnold. We might be at the point now where there's no streaming tight end options left, although I do like yours as well.
Yeah, Hunter Henry, red zone presence, and Jonnu Smith seemingly can't get healthy. And hey, there's the possibility he misses time here. Even if he doesn't, I just like Henry as the red zone presence that he is. Heck, if you catch 2 balls for 18 yards, that stinks. If you catch 2 balls for 18 yards and a touchdown, it's not really that bad, and I'll take it if I'm streaming a tight end. Especially at tight end. Sam Darnold out 4 to 6 weeks, officially on the IR. It's PJ Walker time. I have to continue to see what happens there, but continue. Follow Jeff at Jeff Ratcliffe, FTN, code all in, 20% off, all the work over there and all the bets, picks, and everything, theathletic.com/BetsTV. All capitals. I almost got that out in one breath. We'll see you next week. Good luck in week 10, everybody.